voy a dar la bienvenida a Anna Heagney. I hope I pronounce it properly. So how are you, Anna? How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Silvia. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you are very welcome, and thank you for accepting the interview with us. And well, we are going to speak with you a topic that is very important nowadays, especially that affects minorities like migrants in Ireland. And we are going to talk about the training to support those affected by domestic violence, especially for minorities. So can you tell us a little bit first? I will let you introduce first. Tell us a little bit about you and your organization.
Okay, so my name is Anna and I work for a domestic abuse support service in the Midlands in Ireland, and it's called Offaly Domestic Violence Support Service. We are situated in Tullamore. So I'm working on a very specific project within the domestic abuse support service. So I don't support women who have, or men that have experienced domestic abuse, but I work to try to develop more awareness in migrant and ethnic minority communities about domestic abuse, what the law says in Ireland, and what we can do to help anybody who is experiencing it. And I am also working a bit with trying to make the services make it easier for them to work with women and men from different countries with different backgrounds and different cultures.
Good. Tell us a little bit about this, the Ethnic Minority Development Project. So what is about that project?
Yeah, so a good few years ago, I am not sure exactly what year, but they did a needs analysis in the Midlands in Ireland and discovered that that there should really be more migrant and ethnic minority women and men seeking support in regard to domestic abuse. We know that about one in three or 1 in 4, 1 in 3 women, I think, in the world will in their lifetime experience domestic or sexual abuse and violence. So looking at statistics like that, there weren't that many maybe women from different backgrounds that would come and look for support. So in 2018 and 2019, I was working on a pilot project trying to figure out what the barriers were. Why did these women and men not come forward? Specifically women. We also know that domestic abuse can happen to women and also to men. Mm-hmm. But I think for easiness, I'm going to talk about women because it's easier. Otherwise, I have to say women and men all the time. We just have to remember that it can happen to men too. So for 2 years, I worked with organizations and services in the Midlands, and I learned a lot from organizations and services in Dublin who are working with migrant women, trying to figure out what the barriers are. And I did write a report for the 2 years for the pilot project, and mm-hmm. the barriers that we identified that time were language and communication was the largest barrier. People might not necessarily know that there are domestic abuse support services in Ireland and what these services can do. Where can they find them and what can they do for someone who is experiencing it? Shame and stigma and fear of being rejected by their own community was a big barrier as well. Fear of racism or prejudice. So that's the unknown, going to a service not knowing how they are going to treat you because you're from somewhere else. Maybe immigration status issues came up, not as a very big barrier in this initial survey that I did, but now I know that is a very big barrier for certain communities, obviously. Cultural and religious issues are always mm-hmm. also a barrier to look for support. So this report can be accessed for anybody who is interested in reading it.
And after you have done this report, so there is now a new event coming that is a training to support those affected by domestic violence, especially for minorities, for communities that are, from abroad or immigrants in Ireland. So the training, the training is focused for what kind of target in this case?
Okay, so So one part of my role is to spread awareness within the communities about domestic abuse, like I said, and where they can get support. So we thought that it would be a good idea to identify groups or individuals of people who are interested in learning more about domestic abuse and who would like to be able to take that on and bring it out in their own communities, particularly maybe in their own language, so that we can reach the people that wouldn't look or see maybe advertisement for services in English, but they might, if they get the information in their own language, they might like to hear it better, or they might be. So it's like groups of people that we can't really reach with when we only speak English, and when we advertise and do things in a particular way. So if the community itself, if individuals and groups from the communities could go out and spread this awareness, like talk about it, start the conversation in their community, so that we can get people to know that there is support that they can get.
Very good. So the training will be building this bridge to support people from these communities. When we started this interview, you said you are going to talk more about women than men. So why is that? The statistics show that women are more vulnerable than men in domestic violence.
Yeah, I think that we still have to say that it is a gender-based issue, because if you look at fatalities, if you look at people being murdered, it is mostly women. So when it comes to that ultimate abuse or violence, in Hola Domestic Violence Support Service, we work with men as well. We support men, and we have a lot of clients. So I'm not at all saying that it's not happening to men, because it is. It's maybe not violent so much as maybe coercive control, financial abuse, emotional, verbal abuse, and all that, which is also bad. And men definitely should also come forward to look for support, because there is support to be got.
Okay. And when you were talking about the definition of domestic abuse, what can be defined as a domestic abuse, especially if you are an immigrant as well?
Yeah. So it's the same for everybody. But I think that I have learned that maybe it's being looked at different. It's being interpreted different in different maybe cultures and different backgrounds. So physical violence obviously is the one that most people know about. It's the one that would give someone a black eye, or a kick, or a pinch, or a pulled hair, or that. But there is also financial abuse, for example, isolation, verbal abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, digital abuse or technological abuse. Coercive control is all this abuse, and all the things that I mentioned there. There are tactics of keeping someone in control. It's all about power and control. It's the power and control of one person over another in a relationship.
Okay.
So we all know that in relationships we do sometimes, maybe fight. We have fights, or we argue, or whatever. But this is different, because this is like a systematic way of someone keeping control over someone else. So with threats maybe of violence, threats of there could be isolating someone, not letting them go and see their friends. It could be not making sure that they don't have any money themselves, so that they actually can't. If you don't have any money, you can't do anything. You can't even go for a cup of coffee. It could be someone monitoring someone's movement all the time, maybe micromanaging what they're eating, when they're sleeping, who they're seeing, what they're wearing. There's a whole load. There's a lot that can happen, but it's always that control by someone and the power of someone over someone else. So when someone starts to live their life differently than they would have, because of these threats all the time, that is that is abuse. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that, for explaining that. That is very useful as well. For example, if a woman, for example, is married with an Irish man, there are some barriers, especially to when there is the time to look for some support. That can be the language, that can be, for example, the immigration status. So how can a person, in this case a woman, can find support in Ireland if she is suffering from domestic violence, any kind of domestic abuse?
Nobody should have to live like that. So there is anybody can go and look for support. I know that there are barriers there when specifically maybe with the language, and also being worried that they won't be received, the way they would like when they go to a service maybe. The immigration status issue is difficult. It's very difficult for someone, I suppose, who is undocumented, because but as long as if you have a visa that is dependent on your spouse, as long as that is in date, or just if it has been like that, then you can go and look for your own status. You can get your own stamp, away from your spouse. It takes a little bit of time, but there are ways that you can do that, and we talk a little bit about that in the training as well.
Very good.
So I know it's not easy, but I still would encourage anybody who is living in an abusive relationship to go and look for support. There are ways, that can, that the person can get support. Maybe even get and talk to someone who can help them to make a safety plan, for example, so that they can continue living where they are, but they can learn about how they can keep themselves and their children safe.
Exactly.
For example, or try to, make them to connect with someone so that they can get out sometimes and meet with other people and maybe start to learn English and build themselves up like that. And we can work from there. Nobody should have to live with abuse.
Exactly.
And of course, if someone is really in danger, if it's a violent relationship or something, someone is worried about themselves or their children, or that, they should ring the guards always.
Okay. Yeah, that is sometimes that immigrants especially probably would be afraid to contact, for example, the authorities, the police, or the Garda in this case in Ireland, because they are afraid from some deportation, for example, issues. That's a long topic to talk about as well. But now we are facing also, the COVID-19 situation, restrictions, and we were also in lockdown. How this has affected the situation of women living with partners, for example, and facing domestic abuse?
It's been very, very difficult. It's possible that it hasn't become more domestic abuse, but I think it has accelerated in a way, because normally, people would get a little bit of respite during the day, when he goes to work, she goes wherever. And so, but now when people were locked up together, of course, that respite wasn't there. So it kind of heightened what was happening if there was domestic abuse. So it has been very, very hard. Now we're allowed to go and meet people again, and that, so we, that was actually another reason why we thought about these domestic abuse awareness champions, as we call the people who have trained, in the 6-hour training that I'm giving, that to be able to, if this would happen again, let's say, so that people can, make a network of connections. So someone will know through social media or whatever that this person is a person that you can talk to if anything happens, and then they can make maybe contact, on social media while they're in lockdown. So that was actually one of the things that came out of lockdown as well, that we thought that could build up networks. Of course, these networks are good even when we're not in lockdown. But yeah, so because I heard from services, especially family resource centres, and that they were afraid sometimes. Some women would have they would have been allowed to go to a family resource centre, or they would have had business there, so would have come there once a week maybe, and and had chatted with people, and the people who worked there could keep an eye on them and see what was happening and kind of link in with them and check with them and ask them are they okay and that. I heard services tell me during the lockdown that they were worried. They were afraid to contact them because they knew the abuser was with them in the house, but they were afraid to contact them and ask how they were doing. So I think it would be important there to build up kind of a network of communication. And I think a lot of Facebook pages in different communities started up during lockdown as well, and enabled this kind of contact between people.
Thank you. It is important, as you said, create these networks to support especially cases of domestic violence. Tell us when is the next training started? How can people participate of this training?
Okay, we're doing training. Now I have to look at my calendar here. Okay, we have it. We had a meeting the other day. So yes, there is a training on the 16th of March, one in the morning at 10 and one in the evening at 7. And then we're also having one on the 26th of March, is a Saturday between 10 and 12. Mm-hmm. And now the email address, I don't have that here. It's Gabriella. Gabby is looking after that.
Yeah.
So yes, maybe you can find that and
yeah, we are going to post. Yeah, we are going to post the email address to contact as well. It's in Facebook as well. The form that everyone can fill to participate for the training. Just last thing, just to finish this interview with you. Can you tell us, for example, if there are some signs that we can see if a person is suffering from domestic violence?
Yeah, I think for, to look out for if someone changes their ways, if someone stops coming out maybe to events or to, meeting with people and that, or if someone seems, very quiet and have changed their ways of living, then you can ask the question. Obviously, if someone has a bruise or if, see physical damage like that, it's important to ask the question. You might not get the true answer, but ask the question, because at least you're opening up the door for someone to talk if they want to. So I think look out for someone who is kind of going into themselves a bit more and not going out so much, not being so outgoing maybe as they used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because sometimes, women or anyone who is facing domestic violence probably will be afraid to talk about that as well. So, and do you think with this training we will be able to identify some signs that even if a person does not talk about it, so we can identify that something is happening?
I hope so, but also if we start the conversation, I mean, you are doing that now with putting this on the radio, for example, and if we talk about it, it's like talking about mental ill health that a few years ago in Ireland, that was a taboo. We wouldn't talk about it. Now everybody is talking about it. So we just need to continue talking so that we can, people will feel comfortable saying, oh yeah, that is actually happening to me and I need help. I just wanted to say something about the training so that we're not, the training is not specifically designed for people who are experiencing domestic abuse, because that could actually be a bit traumatizing potentially. Yeah. So we're more looking for people who would like to help to start this conversation in the community and that can, be able to maybe talk to someone who it's happening to and tell them where they can refer to, who they can go, where there is a domestic abuse supporter with what they can do and that. Okay. So we don't want people to get, to maybe feel upset and that. So it's better that they work through what is going on for them, and then they can, maybe later on when they're out the other side. Okay.
Thank you very much, Anna, for this. Just maybe last thing, for example, if someone is suffering from domestic violence, there are some kind of organizations that they can go and find some support. Can you mention a couple of them? So, for example, here in Ireland?
Yeah, I would say look up www.safeireland.ie. They have all the services on their website. all the domestic abuse support services in Ireland. You can look them up by name, or you can look them up on a map and see which one is closest to you. Women's Aid in Dublin obviously have a 24-hour helpline, so you can ring 24 hours a day. Most domestic abuse support services are only open during office hours because they are not emergency services. Refuges would be open 24 hours, and they are also there on Safe Islands list. And Women's Aid has their line for 24 hours a day. They also have an interpretation line, so you can ring and get to talk to someone in your own language. That might not happen straight away, but they will get someone to get back so that you will talk to someone if you find it difficult to speak in English.
Very good, excellent. Thank you for all the information that you have given us in these few minutes of conversation with you. Well, we look forward to more know about this training, future projects that you have as well, and hopefully it's not going to be the last time that we speak. And yeah. So thank you very much, and have a nice week as well, and best of luck with the training. And we invite all Latin American women to participate, not just women, also men that can support as well, creating this kind of networks to support people affected by domestic violence. Thank you very much, Anna.
Thank you, Silvia. Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you.
We are going to continue with Radio Latina. In a few minutes, we are going to speak with Gavita as well about the same, but in Spanish. So stay tuned.